To this now, on the ANC's NEC meeting, Ramaphosa says the party has agreed to work towards rebuilding its branches. He says despite the ANC's slump in the May elections, the party still holds the majority of voting districts. Ramaphosa says ensuring the strength of branches is key.
Despite our electoral setback in 2024, the ANC still commands an outright majority in over 14,000 of the 23,000 voting districts in our country. We decided that our renewal program should focus on rebuilding branches so that they become vibrant branches and activist branches with clear programs of action that address the interests of our people. In doing this, we are guided by the words of Amilcar Cabral, who famously asserted in 1965 that we must always bear in mind that the people are not fighting for ideas, for things that are in anyone's head. They are fighting to win material benefits, to live better and in peace, to see their lives go forward, to guarantee the future of their children.
Right, to stay with that then, we are now joined in the studio by ANC Head of Presidency Sibongile Besani. The party's aim to renew itself and some of the priorities that they have resolved to focus on. Good to have you and thank you very much for your time.
Good evening and thanks for having me.
The ANC intent on renewing its branches, it seems, as particularly one of the key pillars amongst many other things that the NEC would have resolved to do that. How do you plan to do that when political office, or even at branch level, has now become a gateway to economic participation? So members of the ANC don't look at this as just organizational work, but look at this as personal work that enriches them.
Well, the program of renewal has been adopted at conference, that the ANC needs to renew itself, and this follows a diagnostic report that was presented by the former SG of the ANC, who's now the national chairperson, Comrade Gwede Mantashe, at our policy conference, then adopted at the conference in 2017. Now, obviously, that diagnostic report spoke to the very same matter that you just raised about, tendencies of careerism, tendencies of, even corruption within the ranks. So having acknowledged those shortcomings, those kind of toxic cultures within our ranks, the ANC then came up with the program of renewal. Now, we've also established a renewal commission, which is led by the president and a number of NEC members and former presidents. So former President Thabo Mdluli is part and parcel of that. So today, at the closing of the NEC, the president was actually accentuating that program, that this program has got to go much more deeper than what we have done so far. There are various programs that we've embarked on. So the focus of the president was on ensuring that the structures, especially the base, the branch of the ANC, has got to be the center of political activism, has got to be a center where the correct values, principles of, and traditions of the ANC are espoused.
The challenge that many would look at that approach and that statement is that you're almost trying to fix a car while it's driving. And there are some within the organization, even I think former President Thabo Mdluli would have said, there needs to be some kind of a process where you press an eject button and you eject everybody, and everybody reapplies so that you're able to assess them through that membership program, that these are the right people that you are bringing in. Now, if these people, some of them are mayors in a local council, some of them are MECs, some of them are MMCs, and you're saying you're trying to fix them as they continue to lead these particular structures, it simply is not working.
Ideally, one would want to start afresh, but not to bomb the organization, because what is entailed in what you are saying is that let's put a bomb and start and have a new canoe. But practically speaking, we need to make sure that renewal takes place at two levels. The first level is at what I call the organizational hardware, the members, the structures, the constitution, the campaigns and so on. And we've started that process. That is why within the context of organizational renewal, on the hardware, we're focused on membership systems. That's one amongst many. But at another level, you look at what we call the software. Those are, what are the traditions, cultures, values of the organization, principles, and even ethical values that it espouses. So we're looking at those two levels. Now, in the process, the ANC, all leaders who are in the structures have been elected. There are things that we can't do, we can't ignore or disregard. It's the democratic processes that have taken place at all levels of the organization. Those structures are there. They have been elected. Right. Now, the best way is to, how do we make sure that those who are in leadership begin to do their work as required, not only by the Constitution, but by in line with the values and principles that we espouse.
Let me give you two practical examples that we were just dealing with last week. What makes people find this thing of renewal difficult to palate and whether it's really happening, right? One, we were dealing with the Free State Premier and the husband, who's the speaker, right?
Yeah.
Caught up in some kind of a voice note that would have done the rounds of a business person who was in dealings with them, and he feels undone by them cancelling this particular contract of the road that they're fixing there in the Free State. So he leaks that, look, these people have been buying them cars and so on and so forth, right? And people look at that and say, well, these people are people who are in there. There's some money that would have gone to support a Women's League conference and so on and so forth. They say, it's unbelievable, this thing of renewal, right? We look at the Northwest. There was one of the municipalities there. They held a meeting of council. It seems one faction of the ANC wanted that particular speaker to be out and allowed that meeting to happen. It was a disruption. It was a disaster. If you're talking about values that are espoused by the ANC, how that particular speaker behaved in that meeting is not, I'm sure, what you as the ANC would want to be the values that are espoused by the organization. And people look at that and they say, there's no such a thing as renewal. Where is this renewal of the ANC here?
No, there is the process. The program of renewal has started in earnest, quite frankly. But again, we cannot deny. That's why I started off with a diagnostic report that we adopted, trying to indicate that our renewal program emanates from what we assessed, what we agreed that these are toxic tendencies and cultures, foreign cultures within the organization. So we were the first to concede that. We have never been in denial. And obviously, as we embark on this process, we have to deal with issues of corruption. And you would remember, we are the only organization that has taken a Secretary General, put him on what is called step aside. In fact, we are the only organization in South Africa that has a step aside rule, you know. In other words, an organization that deals with people that are alleged to be involved in corrupt tendencies and so on. We are taking, that is part of renewal. In other words, the establishment of the Integrity Commission and the step aside, and some of the most senior leaders are being taken through the courts of law based on the charges or allegations that they face. So that shows that in as much as some of these tendencies still find presence, but there is abounding evidence that there is action on the part of the ANC, whether you are a leader or not. Yeah. So I think our people, they can see that we are more serious about getting rid of toxic tendencies, getting rid of malfeasance, fighting corruption. That is why a week or so ago, the SIU was reporting on the extent to which they have actually saved money that they believe that was in the hands wrongfully. So quite frankly, the ANC is fighting all this malfeasance, and that's why even the president today says, in as much as legal steps and we have the step aside and so on, it is always important that as an organization, we build it, we rebuild it in a proper manner.
2026 is around the corner, so for many people, they are not, I suppose, as patient as the ANC is with itself, because they would have wanted to see great change already in those people. So if you are saying, like they would have said in the Free State, for example, no, the Premier is not going to step aside just yet because she still needs to be put through the processes, internal processes of the ANC. And people say these internal processes of the ANC take way too long. Well, while people with the cloud hanging over themselves continue to be in government.
Let's start this way. Let's maybe speak to that specific matter of the Free State. A businessman goes on social media and says, I've given people money, and he issues out things that are like that, some proof of some kind and so on. Obviously, the step aside or rule requires that such a member who's facing this kind of allegations, should volunteer to appear before the Integrity Commission. So the role of the Integrity Commission is not to find a person guilty or not guilty. Is to say, to what extent do these allegations that you face are damaging to the image, the reputation of the ANC. Based on that, the Integrity Commission then makes a report that goes to the NEC. So that is not a long process. So I want to believe that the leadership at that level in the Free State is immersed, is grappling with that particular process. But it is important that the fact that somebody says you are corrupt, then you have to step out. It can't work that way. In fact, it will defy the the principles of our constitutional democracy. Because tomorrow I can say something about you. You would not accept that the fact that I said it, you must just leave your job.
Right.
That you would prefer to go through a particular process. It doesn't take long. The step-aside process doesn't take long. But it is always important that we take people through a process in any organization, because if we fail to do so, it means we'll condemn people for the longest of times, and without taking them through our own, very own judicial processes.
The one other pillar, if not the second, it's probably the third that you're mentioning in your statement that you're going to focus on is the engaging with communities in particular. So going back down to communities and engaging directly with them so that, for example, you get to explain policy matters. And I want us to talk about that when we come back from the break a little bit more, how that is particularly going to happen in the context of policy contradictions with your partners in the GNU. ANC head of the Presidency Sibongile Besani, my guest tonight about the party's meeting this past weekend. Do stay with us. Back live tonight, we are still in conversation with head of the Presidency of the ANC, Sibongile Besani, about the party's aim to renew, I suppose, also in this context of the government of national unity. We are dealing with one particular aspect of policy matters, right? Our international relations policy that is really being contested, if you like, following the comments by the president that he would have made that we regard Russia as a valued partner and a friend. Your partners in the GNU come up and they say, no, that's not our statement. We don't associate with this thing. Now the Home Affairs Minister says, no, we've signed free visa access with the Ukraine, etc. It's playing out. The president comes out and says, hold on, it's not you. We did this thing. We started with this thing in 2020 and so on and so forth. But these are policy matters that are playing out in the public. And you're saying part of what you need to do is go down to the people on the ground to explain some of these policy matters. And matters of policy also would include NHI, would include Bella Bill and so on. There are many others. But this is one that's currently playing out, where you find that there is this policy message that goes this way and a policy message that goes the other way. How do you handle that?
Look, number one, as a matter of policy and principle, Russia is part and parcel of BRICS. And BRICS is, and South Africa is part of it. As a country, as government, as a state, we're part of BRICS. So anybody who wants to undermine any BRICS partner based on his party position, obviously is making a statement out of 10. It's ill-discipline. That's the first thing. So the fact that President spoke about how we value Russia as an important partner, it's not something out of text. It's something in line with the South African government's policy, for the mere fact that we were part and parcel of BRICS. So we hosted BRICS last year here, not as ANC, but as government. Yeah. So those who are making the statements as they did, they are still grappling with policy positions of government and the role that they should play. But we have been observing this condescending, attitude from some partners of the GNU. And some of these condescending remarks, they are born out of a lack of understanding of how government works, especially when you are in the executive. Now, in the context of this kind of remarks that are really quite unpalatable, unnecessary, and unfortunate, that is why we have a mechanism to deal with policy-related issues, especially when it comes to the government of national unity. And that is why the Deputy President leads, from the ANC side, the clearing house, even from government, the clearing house, so that from time to time we clear issues where there are differences. But what is important, all GNU partners have signed a statement of intent, and the statement of intent has foundational principles. There are about 10. And the statement of intent goes beyond those foundational principles to go to the minimum program of action. Yeah. So obviously there are areas through the statement of intent, we have areas of, I will say, understanding, which should then, the clearinghouse should enable to deal with modalities or, the details thereof. Yeah. So the GNU partners must understand what they have signed. Yeah. And other GNU partners, like especially from the DA, they are failing to grapple with their role as ministers.
How do you deal with that at the political level? Maybe at the government level, there's a clearinghouse. Of course, the president will have the last say. He'll sign the documents. If he doesn't sign, nothing will happen. But, for example, I think it was this past week when they had a meeting on Thursday, the deputy president comes out and says, no, the national dialogue which we have been talking about is going to now be held. I think it's the day of reconciliation, if I'm not mistaken. Helen Zille comes out and says, you see now, we said before we announced this national dialogue, we would have sat around the table and agreed. It's not the ANC just unilaterally making a decision to say this is when the national dialogue is going to be, right? So do you have a clearinghouse as the ANC, the other parties that are there, outside of the government clearinghouse, which of course has got to do with government business, but for you to ventilate these issues amongst yourselves as political parties now?
No, political parties, they always engage from time to time. But what you must understand is, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with a democratic alliance that has this misconception that it is in a coalition with the ANC. In other words, it operates from a wrong premise of thinking that the GNU is a coalition between the DA and the ANC. Right. And in the process, it undermines, that's why I call it a condescending attitude. It undermines other partners of the GNU. Now, that is why from time to time, the DA will always, try to create a narrative that if it disagrees with anything, therefore the GNU will stop. Yeah. But there is evidence that the GNU has been working and has been making strides. That's why we had 100 days to demonstrate some stability that has actually prevailed since the advent of the GNU.
I guess my question is more about how do you counter that? Yes, you're saying you still have a significant footprint, 14,000 of the 23,000 voting districts. But To those already in the ANC who are apprehensive around this relationship with the DA, now you're saying you're going to the communities to explain these things. Who are already apprehensive, some might be leaning towards the SACP position, that they play the guitar and you dance, or it is that grand coalition between the ANC and the DA. Because every time when this statement comes, they say, you see, the DA is telling the ANC what to do. How do you explain that to your members, some of them who would have shifted?
No, let me tell you something, Thabo. This notion that our members are apprehensive, discontent about the GNU, I think it's overly exaggerated. I would not contest the fact that there were concerns initially. The National Working Committee, even the NEC, I think some days after the GNU was established, who have been to the ground. I myself have been to KwaZulu-Natal, in Herigwala, in Tolomane Miayiza, in eThekwini. You know, we engaged even with Josiah Kumet. We engaged with our structures. They wanted to understand this GNU and so on. And in those meetings, we got a sense that they misunderstood. But finally, they appreciated the fact that we're able to come to them as branches, not even regions, as branches of the ANC, and explain to them the premise, the basis of the government of national unity. We've explained everything. So this apprehension it's not something that sort of is hostile towards the ANC or that divides the ANC. Of course, the alliance partners are organizations, especially COSATU, SACP. They are organizations on their own. And they have a right, even though they are our alliance partners, they have a right to really express their views. I always make an example that, you see, on the 1st of July, the South African Communist Party issued a statement that is very elaborate on how did the ANC and the alliance get to the point, to got this outcome of the results. Very, very comprehensive analysis of those, but it also went to an extent of referring strongly to its views on government of national unity. And it said one thing very important there, in that it says, look, it would prefer a minority government with features, a GNU with features of the minority government. Now, obviously, in my view, the Central Committee of the party was not totally in disagreement with the GNU. It was more concerned about the form of the GNU. Now, it got one aspect of what it wanted. It didn't get anything like, it was not a GNU created by the minority government. So, flowing from that official statement of the party, I would want to always think that it is proper to take that official position to say, and judge them on the basis of that.